You are listening to the voice of the frontline protector here at the Private Officer Beat Radio. Every week you'll hear breaking news, topics of training, information for the industry of security, public safety, and law enforcement. So strap in, hang on, we're about to speed off in this episode of the Private Officer Beat Radio. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Private Officer Beat Radio. I'm Rick McCann. We're broadcasting today from our studios in Lower Alabama, South Alabama, right along the Florida Panhandle, and we're tracking, once again, another very serious hurricane. Already as of 8 a.m. this morning, the hurricane is a Category 4, 136 to 154 miles per hour, targeting, once again, the state of Florida, and it is an extremely dangerous storm and will devastate even more of Florida right behind Hurricane Helene, which damaged Florida and 6 states, which we'll get into here in a few moments. As I sit here along the Alabama-Florida coast, we're looking at the storms in real time. We're monitoring and tracking. At one time, several states besides Florida was going to be targeted all in the same storm, the same time, Alabama being one of those, but now that doesn't seem to be the case. Florida will be the main target, the main hit, and coming in around Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, and the other areas along the western coast of Florida, and then the hurricane will track across the state, which is not very wide to begin with, and damage many other areas of Florida before it moves a little bit further north and finally out into the Atlantic. Of course, these things can change. Right now it's one thing, and an hour from now it could be something different, and that's why we're staying on top of it. Today's show is an abbreviated show, although I want to talk to you about intelligence and using sophisticated technology. These are the two words, my friends, that will run security. Not in the future. We can say it's the future of private security, but in reality, these two words are currently driving the industry and will continue driving the industry, and that's technology and intelligence. We'll get into that here in just a few moments. Tragically, we have to talk about all of the first responders that we know so far are dead in the path of Hurricane Helene. These are true heroes. 3 firefighters have been killed that we know of so far, 2 in South Carolina, 1 in Georgia, in the line of duty. 2 police officers that we know of have been killed so far in the line of duty. A police canine has been killed, drowned in the line of duty. 2 security officers that we know of have been killed in the line of duty, and we know that there's 1 more missing in North Carolina, and there are hundreds of people that are missing currently in at least 6 states. As the toll stands right now, the death toll for Hurricane Helene as of 8 a.m. Eastern Time today, October the 7th, 2024. We know of at least 253 are dead. Hundreds and hundreds are missing. There's so many areas, especially in the mountains of North Carolina, that have not had anyone go through door to door or check the area because they just can't get into the area. Right now, there are literally thousands of volunteers from across the country converging into the mountains of North Carolina, many with helicopters and aircraft dropping food, batteries, water, first aid, and other supplies because rescuers cannot get in. The roads are either blocked or are not there. Several towns that I'm very familiar with and have been to many, many times no longer exist. And the damage is just unbelievable. With this new hurricane, Hurricane Milton, now fast approaching the doors of Florida, we expect more deaths, more first responders being injured, maybe even killed. Devastation like the state of Florida has never experienced before. They've experienced many hurricanes. They've been the target of hurricanes from the Atlantic and from the Gulf, and they have always rebuilt and survived. But with a double whammy, a double hurricane, back to back within a week of each other, FEMA has already said that they don't have any money. They've given a lot of money to other causes, which I'm not going to get into because it's very political and, that's not what this radio show is about. But many people are being left behind, and with a second hurricane coming across into Florida, I just don't know how. I know that they will, but I just don't know how they will recover from it. We're going to take a quick break. I do want to come back here shortly and tell you what's in the news and talk for just a few moments about the two words that will drive the private security industry from now and well into the future and probably forever and ever more. You're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector, the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Are you looking for the finest private security officer training in the Charlotte metropolitan area? Do you need PPS qualifications in armed or unarmed training? Or maybe you're over there across the line in South Carolina and you need the SLED training. Well, we've got the right training at the right time for you. Premier Training Academy, located at 5624 Executive Center Drive, Suite 142 in metropolitan Charlotte, North Carolina. Give them a call today, 704-806-4933. They also offer firearms training, personal protection, first aid and CPR, and so much more. Call John at 704-806-4933.
Welcome back to the Private Officer Beat Radio. This morning, sitting here along the Gulf Coast at the edge of the state of Florida, broadcasting this morning, in a way I feel blessed to be able to move around, to be able to, if I need to go someplace and help out, if I need to go someplace and hunker down, I can do that. Many people cannot. But this morning, broadcasting here, monitoring another hurricane coming to the state of Florida, and then maybe veering off and heading north again. We don't know about that at this moment. We know that many security officers, thousands and thousands of security officers, are in Florida. We have reached out to several of our members, and right now they say everything is good. They don't really have a big call for extra security because much of the state, especially on the west side, has evacuated or are in the evacuation mode. A very close friend of mine, former law enforcement who lives on that west side, south of Tampa, told me late yesterday that he and his wife are evacuating early this morning, and several others that we have talked to by email say they've already evacuated. I know that once all of this is over, the hurricane has come and done whatever it's going to do, that'll be a great need for private security in the state of Florida, as there already is in Virginia and North Carolina. We have looked at what is required for security officers in Florida. We know from previous training, and because some of our members are instructors and have security schools there, we know that armed security is a little over 40 hours of training. Unarmed is going to be less. But if you're going to go to any of these states that have been hit or are going to be hit by hurricanes this year, as far as I know, and this is from checking multiple times throughout the years, there's no state that's going to recognize you as a security officer unless you're trained. And it's very difficult to get that training. Some states you may be able to get the unarmed training online, but for the majority of states, especially I know for sure in Florida, you're going to have to go and get that class, go to the range if you're going to be armed, and go through the process. It is against the law to operate without that license, and although you may not be caught at that moment, later on through investigations or complaints or whatever, they may come knocking at your door. So my advice is to try and get that training today, tomorrow, somehow get it secured so that you're able to move into the area and do that hurricane security if that's what you want to do. I know that in times past, many people move into the area who are not licensed as security companies. Some even have impersonated law enforcement. I know of a situation myself that happened not too long ago where several people came in and identified themselves as off-duty law enforcement. They were there to help when in fact they were not there to help at all. And so, law enforcement is going to be skeptical, and they're going to really verify any kind of identification that you have. So, if you go into these areas, just be aware that, law enforcement may really question you, and if you don't have the right credentials, if you don't have the right license, whether a company or individual, well, you may find yourself on the wrong side of the law, even though you were there to help out. We have a lot to talk about today, but this is going to be a shortened version of our normal radio show as we're preparing and tracking another hurricane for the state of Florida, and I really don't know. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how to tell you to prepare if you live in Florida. There are some evacuations that are mandatory and others that are advisory at this moment. So if you are in an advisory area, you have an advisory warning, then obviously you don't have to go, but it may be wise to begin to move out of the area until the storm is over. We're going to take another quick break. I want to come back and talk about what I see are the two big key areas for security now and throughout its future. I'm also going to talk about just a couple of news items that's currently making the news. And remember, you can contact us 24 hours a day at helpdesk@privateofficer.com. And you can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. And you can read our news at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com. I'll be right back.
Nurse, I need you to apply pressure to the head wound until I can get to it. I'm concerned she's lost too much blood.
Oh, no.
You in the corner, who are you? You're not supposed to be here.
She's my girlfriend, Doctor.
You need to wait out in the waiting room.
Please, Doctor, I want to stay with her.
Look, she's been badly injured. So if you want to do what's best for her, you need to let us do our work.
Please, Doctor, she has to be okay. I didn't mean to do this. I love her.
Wait a second. You were the driver?
Yes, but I didn't mean to. I swear, we went to dinner. I was just buzzed. I only had a few drinks.
Just buzzed? Why didn't you tell us that? In that case, your girlfriend is fine.
Hey, sweetie. I feel great. You want to get out of here?
I can't believe this. Really, Doctor? She's really okay?
What, are you kidding? No, not really. Nurse, get me a suture kit. Stat.
Buzzed driving. Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Ad Council, and this state.
They say if you want a wish to come true, never tell anyone. But there is one wish that can make the difference between life and death. And this wish can only come true if you tell someone. Please, let your family know you want to be an organ donor.
This is the Private Officer Beat Radio. I'm Rick McCann behind the microphone, and today this is an abbreviated radio show, although we are talking mainly about the hurricane and both Hurricane Helene and that particular hurricane actually ravaged more than Florida. It did damage in numerous states, including North and South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, and Florida. At least 8 or possibly more first responders, including law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, and private security, died in the line of duty. And unfortunately, now with another hurricane that we already know it's a Category 4, and that's the scary part. It's not like it's going to ramp up and maybe weekend before it makes landfall. We already know that it's a Category 4, and that's a very dangerous thing to know. There are a lot of things that you can do to help out. You can contact the Red Cross. You can join a group, a volunteer group, get with the church, all sorts of things after the storm has come and gone, and when it's safe to be there. I was all prepared and had researched the subject of school security and how things have changed in the last just couple of months, and how many schools are now ramping up security even beyond where it was pre-COVID. Many schools are really, I guess, at their wits' end with the violence and the armed students and the gangs that have taken over some schools. And I was going to talk about school security and how things are rapidly changing and how private security needs to change with that. But with the storm, obviously, most of my time today is going to be spent on the storm. Talking about school security, though, millions of dollars are proposed in a new bill that may pass New York for small religious and private schools that would be funded, even though they're private, would be funded by public funds to provide security and to give them the same protection that other public schools have across the state. This was a subject that was raised a couple of years ago. They already give some schools with student enrollment of over 300, private schools, money for security, but now this new bill will fund those schools who have under 300 students enrolled in their private school. Arlington, Virginia, a second hit and miss smash and grab at a very upscale mall called Pentagon City Mall. It's in Arlington, near the Capitol. 4 thieves stole hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. They smashed all of the glass cases. They sprayed the fire extinguisher. That mall has a lot of security, but unfortunately, as far as I know, they're all unarmed security, and so even though they responded, there wasn't a whole lot that they could do. Police got there quickly, and no one's been arrested but they are investigating. In Michigan, a Walgreens security officer working plainclothes has shot and killed an armed shoplifter. This all occurred over the weekend. According to police, they responded to 522 Torrance Avenue in Calumet City, just outside Chicago, and a 42-year-old man and a 48-year-old woman were stopped by security and store employees after they shoplifted a number of items. The woman fled, but the male pulled out a handgun, and that's when the plainclothes security officer, who had a legal concealed weapons permit, pulled his gun and fired and killed the shoplifter. It's under investigation, but at this time it looks like, self-defense. And I've never heard of a security agent for any store. This happened at Walgreens. I've never heard of a security agent for any retailer, and I worked in that area for more than a dozen years, being armed, although it's a possibility. And maybe he was contracted through a third-party security company, and that's why he had an armed security license. I'm not sure. The article didn't go into that. Coming out of Cromwell, Connecticut, another very sad situation that continues to happen on a regular basis. An 81-year-old husband who was visiting his wife at a nursing home shot and killed her and then committed suicide. This happened in Cromwell, Connecticut, a city that I know quite well. And apparently there was no security there, they said. They had no metal detectors and no way to know that he was armed. The Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota is the latest to install shot detection sensors. These are microphones that set off an alarm when they detect something that has a decibel similar to gunshots. Now, many cities use these and they are very successful. Others don't no longer use them because they don't believe in them. There's a lot of false alarms. That's how it is with any alarm system, whether it's a burglar alarm or a fire alarm. You're going to get those false alarms. But in many areas, police praise shot detection because it saves lives. They're able to get there quickly, surround the area, and sometimes capture the shooter. Well, the Bloomington Police Chief, Booker Hodges, said that the department supports this technology. There's a lot of criminal activity in and around the Mall of America, of course, a very large place, and it could prevent or even help to apprehend suspects, even those who was just firing shots but didn't hit anybody. The mall went with a company called Amber Box. I'm not very familiar with it, but we are doing some research. An off-duty Atlanta police officer was shot and killed over the weekend. Very tragic. This was in Douglas County, just outside of the city of Atlanta. He apparently was breaking into a home. It wasn't his home. According to Douglas County Sheriff Tim Pounds, deputies responded to the burglary call and got into a situation where they had to use lethal force. They didn't know, of course, that he was an off-duty police officer. The off-duty officer has been identified as investigator Aubrey Horton, who was an investigator with the Atlanta Police Department, and he had been an officer of several awards. Police now believe that he may have been having some type of psychological mental health crisis or a medical emergency because he did not have any type of situation in his record, in his life, where he would have done this. He didn't know anyone that would live there, so there's more than meets the eye, as they say. A non-duty security officer was stabbed. This happened in Lancaster, California. He was on the Metrolink train, a commuter train, when he was stabbed Sunday night near Acton. The stabbing occurred about 9:30, police said, near the Antelope Valley 285 train, and police say the security officer has non-life-threatening injuries. In Virginia, Fairfax County, a Virginia police officer who we reported on shot and killed a shoplifting suspect a couple of years ago. Well, he's been found not guilty of manslaughter, but he has been found guilty of an illegal use of a firearm, which is a felony in Virginia, and he could still go to prison. But the jury has some time to mitigate that sentence, and it may come back where, he doesn't go to prison. We'll be following this further. A security officer in Detroit, Michigan, at a school disarmed an armed student after noticing a bulge in his pants. Police and school officials are praising the security officer after he noticed a 16-year-old student with what appeared to be a gun as he was coming through the front door and through the metal detecting area. He didn't want to be wanded by a metal detector. He put up some resistance, and that's when one of the security officers noticed he had a gun under his shirt. He subdued the person, took away his gun, and police arrested the 16-year-old. In Dinwiddie, Virginia, which is just south of Richmond, a Central State Hospital security officer was found not guilty in the death of one of the patients there. He said that the patient was violent and that they were trying to subdue him. The person passed away, and he was charged with manslaughter. In El Paso, Texas, at the border, well, not quite at the border, but at the Bush Airport, police say that a motorized wheelchair was stuffed with cocaine. It caught the attention of U.S. Customs and Border Patrol and TSA. They had suspicions that something wasn't right. It didn't look like it was a factory. There were some objects or parts of it that didn't look like they were factory made. The drug dog came, and sure enough, 27 pounds of drugs, cocaine, was there. And the man, who was not identified, was arrested. This is something you don't hear every day, but we do hear it more than we should. An Albuquerque security officer shot a man after he was doused with beer spray. Beer spray is much more potent than OC or pepper spray. State police are investigating. They say the security officer was working at the Children and Youth and Families Department at a building in Albuquerque when he came upon a man who was trespassing. The man pulled a big can of beer spray and began spraying the security officer, and that's when the security officer shot him. The security officer has not been arrested, and it's under investigation. Staying in New Mexico, right there in Albuquerque in the county, a 15-year-old has been accused of pointing a gun at a security officer at the Coronado Center Mall. He was taken into custody after terrorizing mall security, who, by the way, were unarmed. Multiple police officers responded, and after a foot chase, they were able to take him into custody. In Jacksonville, Florida, a security officer there was murdered while working at what they call an adult arcade, which is a cover for a gambling site. Police said they responded at 2 a.m. to Dragon Arcade, which was on Edgewood Avenue North. The man had multiple gunshots. Police say that there was a robbery and that the security officer tried to intervene and unfortunately was shot and killed. Read more of our breaking news at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot. I'll take a quick break and I'll be right back.
There was the explosion, and I remember just opening my eyes, and it got both of my legs. I had surgery after surgery, and what's going to happen next? The Wounded Warrior Project said, look, brother, everything's going to be okay. 3 months from now, 4 months from now, a year from now, you'll be fine. I don't know if I would be as well adjusted as I am now if it wasn't for them.
To learn more, call 1-877-832-6997 or visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
Welcome back to the Private Officer Beat Radio, a production of Private Officer International and Blue Ram Media. Today we're talking, primarily about the big hurricane, Category 4, that is about to pounce on the state of Florida. I'm broadcasting live right at the edge of the storm at Alabama and Florida's line, what we call the Floribama line. Broadcasting, tracking, and watching as the hurricane begins making its way closer and closer to the state of Florida, which is already suffering greatly from the previous Hurricane Helene, and we're going to be ready to sweep in there, move in there, and help any way that we can. I know I said moments ago, several of our members of Private Officer International and personal friends of mine have evacuated or are evacuating today. This Category 4 will substantially damage the state of Florida as it hits the west coast and then quickly cruises across the state, which is not very wide, into the Atlantic and damage other areas, including, the northern part where Georgia and Florida meet up. That could also be under a Category 1 or 2 hurricane as well. We're going to stand by here, and if you're interested in getting involved, contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com. We're going to be reaching out to our partners and friends in Florida after the hurricane leaves the area to see what we can do, and we'll try to coordinate people into the area, supplies, and whatever else that we can do. Contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com if you want to get involved. For the last couple of years, I have dedicated myself more and more to technology, to intelligence. These are the two words that are driving the security industry today. I've talked over the years about technology, intel, and how retailers are using intel by gathering information from social media and other sources to see who are the organized retail criminals, where are the hot spots, putting their resources and their money to those primary areas, working with law enforcement more and more, and being able to get good surveillance video, which is helpful in prosecution. And so technology and intelligence are driving the private security and law enforcement. I mean, I have talked about now for at least 2 years about the Real-Time Crime Center and how that technology are really putting law enforcement in the forefront of being able to protect the public and to apprehend the suspects. And the way they do that is with hundreds and hundreds of cameras spread out throughout the city or town, and access to many of hundreds and maybe even thousands in some cases of other cameras of stores and homes, businesses, schools, and other places where they are all connected and are able to immediately go to any of those cameras when a crime occurs in that particular area. The Real-Time Crime Center is something that I have begun putting together and will be making available to small law enforcement agencies, schools, and some private companies. I think, having been in the electronic security business, having owned an electronic security alarm business, alarms are very useful. Cameras are even more useful. And the primary difference between cameras being installed and what the Real-Time Crime Center does is that cameras, they memorialize what's happened for evidence possibly later, but a Real-Time Crime Center or a Real-Time Intelligence Center, as some of them are called, they not only memorialize, but they are watching them in real time surveillance, so that when something pops off, when something happens, they're able to immediately radio law enforcement and send them to the right location, give them the description of possible suspects, vehicles involved, license plates, and so forth. And so technology is really a big part of how private security and public law enforcement are and will be doing their jobs for the forever future. When we talk about technology, we're talking primarily about electronic security components such as motion sensors. So even when you're working at, let's say, an apartment complex, you can set up a temporary motion sensor, let's say in the parking lot, or if you're working a large property and you're all by yourself, you can set up a couple of motion sensors on different parts of the property, and it will notify you through text on your phone when that motion sensor has been set off and someone's walked past it. If you are a hunter, you know all about trail cameras. Trail cameras are a lot more useful for other things besides just tracking animals. Trail cameras can be set up any place very quickly, no tools necessary, and it also will send you a text, a notification of not only that someone's crossed the motion sensor, but a picture of who or what has crossed through that cone of motion. When we're talking about electronic security, we're also talking, of course, about surveillance cameras, but surveillance cameras don't do a whole lot to stop crime. Some people might look at it and say, oh, I better not do it here. Others say, nobody's watching, I don't care, they're not going to catch me. But when it's real-time surveillance, when people are behind a monitor watching those cameras and able to immediately dispatch law enforcement or security, it makes a whole world of difference. Another component of electronic security or technology that we're talking about today is LPRs, license plate readers. These are cameras that also have motion sensors, so when you pass by it, it takes a picture of the license plate. And if you are able to get the information off that tag, run it through a database, you'll know who was on the property, and you'll also be able to build your own database, and that's what many apartment complexes, condominiums, and gated communities have begun doing over the last few years, as well as businesses. Malls are now putting together their own database through LPRs. They have LPRs at the entrances, and when you come in, it automatically checks the license plate to see if it's stolen or wanted, and then it builds their own database. LPRs are great tools. You can buy them as a security company. In fact, we're promoting several different brands right now. Contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com. Another piece of the puzzle is facial recognition. Many companies use this. You may not know it, even though there is some signage someplace. You might pass by it, don't even recognize what it says. Most people don't pay attention to signs, but many places, auditoriums, baseball fields, sporting events, concerts even, have begun using facial recognition to identify high target wanted suspects, people who are known gang members, and so on and so forth. But technology definitely is going to be and will continue to be a driving force in the private security and law enforcement field. The next area of this, two words that will drive and the industry probably for the rest of its, history, technology, is intelligence. I talked about how intelligence is being used by retailers, loss prevention, and organized retail crime investigators to go through and be able to identify people through social media and other areas. They're also coordinating all of this with other retailers, law enforcement, and other entities. And facial recognition, LPR, surveillance cam, all of that leads into intelligence. Being able to identify who's committing most of the crimes in the area, what kind of crimes are being committed, having some kind of communication between not only the other security companies, but malls, schools, law enforcement, so that you can track what's happening in the area where you have customers, be able to know what, who the gangs are, what the hot buttons are, and be able to track in real time this intelligence to prevent crimes and also to apprehend those committing the crimes. Kind of to close this out real quick, because today we're talking about the hurricane, what I see security doing more and more of is probably what's going to continue to happen. Security is getting more and more involved in education, not only training their own security personnel, but training churches and schools and businesses. I know of several security companies who have given of their time to train companies where they have as clients, train them to protect themselves, personal security and safety, home security and safety, and that's really an area that is underserved, and we could not only increase our clientele, but also really help those clients that we have. Protectors. We're going to be protectors. We've been protectors. We've been on the front line forever since the beginning of private security. But with a lower number of law enforcement, you're going to see more security officers really getting involved, interacting, preventing, apprehending criminals, and getting more and more, I hate to say it, but in the face of crime and in the face of the suspect. And we're seeing that happening, and it's not just in the last few days or weeks, but the last few years. Enforcers, well, we've always been enforcers to some degree, mainly property rules and regulations, keeping people at bay who are, not obeying the rules of the property. But enforcers, more and more private security are detaining people, using either citizens arrest to arrest them, as in many states. South Carolina and Virginia are two of the stronger states that allow security officers to make arrests. In South Carolina, armed security officers that are licensed by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Department have the same authority on their property as a deputy sheriff. We talked about that numerous times. And there's over 30 states that have private police who are mainly private security working at a hospital, hotel, or a school, but they also have private law enforcement powers, and they can make actual arrests. The other area, which kind of flows right into what I was talking about just now, is that I really do believe that more and more security personnel will be sworn officers. I talked a while back about a question that someone had about auxiliary police, making security officers auxiliary police so that they can make some arrests when necessary. And I'm seeing this more and more. We're going to have more sworn law enforcement, more sworn private security, and private security in some areas already have begun changing their name from security to public safety, and they're doing more than just providing security. They're providing EMS. They're providing first aid at sporting events and concerts and other locations. My companies do the same thing. But I do believe that as we continue marching forward, especially with the way that crime has increased and the lower numbers of law enforcement, private security is going to use technology, intelligence, and education and more authority to really progress not only their companies, their positions, but the safety and security of their clients and of their communities. Thank you for being with me today on this abbreviated show. We're going to rush off air right now and check on that hurricane. And remember, contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com. If you're in the Florida area, if you're in the target zone, let us know. If you can safely send us pictures, helpdesk@privateofficer.com. That would be appreciated. Until the next time, y'all be safe, be blessed. We'll see you back here on the radio show.